Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The fridge door slammed into my arm before I heard him. Our son jerked in his high chair and started wailing right away. I kept the spoon in the air and tried not to spill oatmeal on him. Behind me, my husband cursed about the debit card like it had betrayed him personally. I am Emily, and I was 32 when that morning blew everything open. He yanked the card from the fridge and slapped it on the counter. "You used my account again for groceries." His voice cut through the crying, flat, annoyed, already loaded. I pretended to focus on the spoon because meeting his eyes meant choosing a side. "You quit your job to play house, remember?" He nudged the card toward me with one finger like evidence. "Now every dollar in this place comes from me, not you." He did not raise his tone, which somehow made it worse. I scraped oatmeal from our son's chin and kept my eyes down. I told him I bought diapers and formula and nothing extra, nothing fun. He leaned on the counter and watched me feed our kid like a supervisor. "This is my paycheck, my house, my responsibility, I own this." The sentence hit harder than the fridge door because I knew he meant more than bills. At the time I laughed it off and wiped the tray like he made a weird joke. I told myself he was stressed from work and I should not add fuel. Still, my shoulders locked and my hand trembled over our son's mouth. Later, I would remember that tremor as the moment something inside me shifted. Back then, I just swallowed and kept quiet, which is exactly what he counted on. Our son threw the spoon and howled, demanding attention we were not giving. I unbuckled him and pressed his face into my shoulder until his sobs eased. Behind me, my husband opened a cabinet and let it bang shut, apparently by accident. The sound made our son cling tighter, which told me who he feared more. I caught my husband watching that reaction with a tiny smirk before he hid it behind his mug. "Why are you so angry about groceries?" My voice came out thin. He shrugged and took a sip from his mug, eyes still on me. "Because I work full-time and you spend full-time, that is why." The way he framed it turned our family into a ledger with me listed as loss. Maybe I could pick up shifts again, something on weekends or nights. I tried to sound casual, like the idea had just appeared. He froze with the mug halfway down and stared at my face. "So you want strangers raising our son while you chase a paycheck again?" The word strangers lodged in my chest because he knew exactly where to stab. I was the one who walked away from my salary, that part was true. I thought we were trading one kind of work for another, not trading power. He looked at me like I had suggested abandoning our baby outside. I backed off and changed the subject because I did not want that accusation stuck to me. He relaxed instantly and I learned which topics would cost me peace. He checked the time on his watch and grabbed his keys from the hook. The baby reached for him, but he only patted our son's leg and stepped back. "Remember who is keeping the lights on while you stay home and play mother." He smiled like it was a harmless comment, yet the words stuck like grit. He rattled the keys before heading out, as if to underline who could walk away. After the door clicked behind him, I replayed his line about owning everything here. Not sharing it, not building it with me, owning it. That word held a different weight than usual everyday complaints about money. It sounded planned, like something he had tried out in his head before using it on me. I did not know yet how many times I would hear it again. I strapped our son back into the chair and started scraping dried oatmeal from the tray. Every movement felt slow and careful because I suddenly saw how fragile my spot here was. This was his mortgage, his account, his name on every document I had never read closely. Mine was the baby on my hip and the chores in my hands, nothing anyone could not replace. I kissed our son's forehead and whispered a promise I was not yet brave enough to believe. The package hit the table so hard our son flinched. He watched me cut the tape with narrowed eyes, arms folded. "Another delivery," his voice had that fake casual tone again. "I must be working overtime for the fun of it." Inside was the baby monitor I had picked after 3 nights of half sleep. I lifted it out slow, careful, ready for impact. "This one has better range," I said, trying to sound neutral. "So you can relax upstairs while I grind to pay for it." I felt my jaw tighten, but my hand stayed steady on the box. "It's for when he naps and I'm doing chores," I answered. He took the receipt from the box and scanned the total. "You really do not shop like this," came from your pocket. The words slapped harder than his tone ever could. He slid the bank card into his wallet and snapped it shut. I'll keep this for now, he added. Walking to the fridge. Text me if you actually need something, we'll see. That "we'll see" hung there way longer than the sound of the drawer. Our son patted the package and started babbling nonsense. I forced a smile for him and opened the manual like everything was fine. Inside, though, I could feel a new line being drawn around me. Later that afternoon, he messaged two friends to come over. Game night here, he called out, not checking with me first. You'll handle snacks since you're the one with free time. Free time, the phrase landed like a joke with teeth. By the time they arrived, I had our boy on my hip. One of them handed over a six-pack and glanced at the toys. Man, you got a whole setup here, he said, grinning. Yeah, I fund the operation, she runs it. My husband bumped his shoulder. They laughed as if it was harmless and normal. He tilted his head toward me so they would all look. Stay-at-home perk, right, one of them added, elbowing him. Only if your boss is generous enough to cover everything. My cheeks burned, but I kept my voice steady. I also work, I said, bouncing our son to calm him. Just not in a way anyone here respected, not really. They went quiet for a beat, then turned back to the game. In the kitchen later, I heard them through the doorway. You're lucky, one of his friends said, opening another drink. My ex dragged me to court for half my stuff. That's why nothing's in her name, my husband replied, almost proud. The floor felt unsteady even though I was standing still. She wanted to quit, I let her, he continued, pouring more. But I keep the accounts clean, learned from my dad. He laughed lightly and clinked bottles like it was a smart strategy. I leaned against the wall where they could not see me. Up until that sentence, I could pretend he was just stressed. That little brag stripped the excuse away and threw it out. He liked the control, not just the paycheck, and that changed everything. After they left, he dropped onto the couch, phone in hand. I gathered empty bottles with more force than necessary, glass rattling. You really told them nothing is under my name, I asked. He glanced over, one eyebrow up, already on the defensive. It's practical, he replied, stretching his legs across the table. Easier for taxes, easier if something happens at work. I'm your partner, not an intern, my voice shook but stayed loud. He muted the TV and stared like I had crossed some invisible line. You earn zero right now, he finally said. That means you have zero to lose if anything goes wrong. I let that sink in because that was the honest part. The rest was about power, not safety, and we both knew it. I live here too, I pushed, heart racing faster than the words. Our son lives here and I'm the one raising him. He rolled his eyes and grabbed the remote from the cushion. You wanted to be home, so enjoy it and stop complaining. That night I lay awake listening to him snore through the wall. I replayed every line from earlier like evidence in a folder. Nothing in my name, my effort framed as a favor he granted. The pattern was finally too clear to chalk up to stress. 2 days later, the next hit landed at the pharmacy counter. I tried to pay for our son's prescription with the same card. The screen flashed a message and the cashier glanced up quickly. Do you have another way to pay? She asked, lowering her voice. Heat crawled up my neck as people shifted behind me. I dug through my wallet and found only a few crumpled bills. They covered just the medication, nothing else in the basket. I left the other items behind and nodded like I planned it. Back in the car, I called him before pulling out. The car didn't work, I said, gripping the steering wheel. He cleared his throat on the other end, cool and calm. Accounts low because groceries keep hitting it, be more careful. It was medicine, I said, each syllable clipped from anger. Then it's good you had cash, he answered, almost amused. No need to max anything out when we have a single income. That phrase, single income, pressed on my chest longer than the call. When I got home, I checked the banking app on my phone. The joint account had less than I expected, way less. Several transfers showed up to another account I did not recognize. I stared at the numbers until our son started fussing in his seat. I wanted to confront him right away and throw the phone at him. Instead, I buckled our boy into his swing and watched him kick. If I went at this blind, I knew he would twist it. I needed clarity first, even if it meant playing quiet for a bit. Later in the evening, I placed the mail on the table near him. There were envelopes with his name only, some marked urgent. Do you mind walking me through these? I asked, keeping my tone even. I like to know what's going on since I'm here all day. He flipped through the pile without inviting me closer. It's just boring payment stuff, he said, dropping them into a stack. Nothing you need to stress about, I've got the finances handled. He brushed his hand like dusting crumbs, like he was doing me a favor. You could at least show me the schedule, I tried again. If something happens, I should know what's due when. He laughed under his breath and shook his head. If something happens, you call me, that's the plan. That was the moment the fear shifted into strategy. He trusted that I would stay dependent because of our son. He trusted that I would never challenge him on the numbers. He did not see me watching the way he guarded every document. That week I started keeping my own tiny log in an old notebook. Dates, phrases, costs, even the way his tone changed around others. I wrote fast while our boy napped, hand cramping but sure. It felt like drawing a map out of a maze I had not admitted I was in. At the end of each day, I hid the notebook deep in the diaper bag. He never looked there, not once, not even when hunting for wipes. While I rocked our son to sleep, I repeated one thought over and over. If he treated money like a weapon, I needed my own armor. The banking app rejected my password 3 times in a row. Our kid fussed on my hip while I tapped in the digits again. Invalid credentials, the message kept popping up like a joke. By the 4th try, my hands were shaking enough to make him whimper. I backed out of the app and reopened it as if that might fix anything. Same red warning, same locked account, same rising buzz in my chest. I knew I had the sequence right, I used it every week. The only new variable in that equation was him. I called his number before I could overthink it. Did you change the online login? I asked, skipping hello. Bank made me update security, his keyboard clicked in the background. You should have told me, my voice came out tighter than planned. He exhaled like I had interrupted something important. I'll handle the bills from here, he answered, tone smooth. Less risk of you clicking on nonsense and locking us out. There was a small pause after us that did not include me. That account covers our family, I pushed, shifting our son to the other side. I need access to pay for his stuff during the day. You have me for that, he replied, chair creaking as he leaned back. If you need money, you ask, that keeps things organized. The word organized landed like a lid snapping shut. I'm not a teenager asking for gas, I snapped, surprising both of us. He went quiet for a beat, then his voice dropped. You wanted to step away from work, this is how it looks. I hung up first before the argument spiraled into the usual loop. Our toddler pressed his palm to my cheek, eyes searching my face. It's fine, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I knew it was not fine, not even close, and that knowledge finally stuck. The next morning, I buckled our kid into the stroller and grabbed my bag. He was at the counter scrolling through emails, coffee half finished. Bank texted me, he said without looking up. Remember, you do not need to mess with the account today. I'm taking him to story time, I answered, fastening the stroller strap. He hummed like he did not care, but I saw his jaw tense. I'll be back before lunch, I added, already opening the front door. I did not mention that our first stop was not the library. At the branch, a woman behind the desk smiled at my son before turning to me. I can't sign in anymore, I explained, sliding my ID across. I'd like to check what is going on with the main account. I kept my voice steady like this was just an annoying glitch. She typed for a while, brow furrowing in small movements. Which profile is yours? She asked, glancing at the screen. I gave her my name, then his, then the last 4 digits I remembered. Her expression softened in that way people use when delivering bad news. You're listed as an authorized user on the card, she said carefully. The checking account itself is under his sole ownership. I stared at her mouth, trying to process the phrase sole ownership. Somewhere in the stroller, my kid kicked his feet and started humming. I thought this was a shared account, slipped out before I could filter it. That would require you both here signing together, she answered. She tapped a brochure with her pen, pointing to some tiny line. We'd need his consent to add you as a joint holder. So I can't see the balance without him, I asked. Not without his authorization, she lowered her voice for that part. If you'd like your own account, we can start that process today. Her eyes flicked to the stroller, then back to me, reading more than I said. For a second I imagined opening a new account right there. Then I pictured him noticing a statement in the mail, that tight smile. I was not ready for that collision yet, not without a plan. I need to thin. I told her, which was the truest thing I'd said all week. On the way out, she slipped a folded pamphlet into my hand. Some community resources, she murmured, handing me a pen too. I stuffed both into the diaper bag before I reached the door. My heart pounded like I had just stolen something instead of hearing facts. I walked to the library anyway so my lie would stay intact. Inside, I found an open computer and logged in with the guest code. My fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than they needed to. Then I typed 4 words that changed how I saw my own life. Spouse controls all finances. The search results filled the screen faster than I could breathe. Articles, checklists, forums with people telling stories that sounded familiar. Every example I read nudged me closer to a word I had avoided. Abuse. I did not say it out loud, but it sat there on the page. One article listed behaviors in short bullet points, simple and blunt. Limit access, monitor spending, punish with money, call it responsibility. I scrolled until my eyes burned and my kids started whining. In the corner of the screen, a small link mentioned legal aid. I clicked it and copied the number onto the inside cover of my notebook. The pen shook just enough to leave a jagged underline beneath it. Before logging off, I opened a new email account. I used part of my maiden name and a random number combination. For the first time in months, I created a password he did not know. It felt like hiding a spare key no one else realized existed. I snapped a quick photo of the bank brochure with my phone. Then I emailed it to the fresh address along with my notes. In the subject line, I wrote 1 word so I would not forget later. Bruv. By the time we reached home, my pulse had calmed, but only on the surface. He was already there, early, sitting at the table with his laptop open. You stayed out longer than usual, he remarked, eyes on the screen. He tracked our routines more closely than any calendar app ever could. Story time ran over, I answered, unbuckling our son and lifting him out. He glanced at the bag resting on my shoulder but did not comment. You remember what we talked about with the account access, he continued. His fingers drummed on the tabletop in a steady, controlled rhythm. I remember you locking me out, I replied, placing our kid on the floor. He finally looked up, expression cool like this was a performance review. I'm protecting us from overspending, he said, leaning back. Going forward, I'll hand you cash for household needs at the start of each week. An allowance, I repeated, the word sour in my mouth. He shrugged as if it was obvious and efficient. This will keep things on track and teach you to prioritize. The last part hung there like he was lecturing a student who had failed. He pulled a folded stack from his wallet and counted out a fixed amount. That covers food, diapers, anything else you think is necessary. He placed the bills on the table, then slid his wallet back into his pocket. If it runs out, then something wasn't essential after all. I stared at that stack as though it were a leash. Picking it up felt like agreeing, leaving it there felt like surrender. I folded it once and tucked it into my back pocket anyway. I knew I could turn even his leash into something he did not intend. That night I drove to the store with a detailed list in my head. I filled the cart with what we needed and returned a few impulse items from last week. The cashier handed me a handful of small bills and coins after the exchange. I kept 120 tucked under my phone while I shoved the rest into my wallet. At home, I slipped that extra bill into the spine of an old cookbook. It was the only thing in the kitchen he never touched. My fingers pressed the cover closed like sealing a secret envelope. It was not much, but it was the first thing in a new column. A few days later, another mom at the park mentioned her direct deposit. She laughed about splitting expenses with her husband when they argued over takeout. He knows I can pay my own rent if I want to, she joked, brushing crumbs from her lap. The way she said it so lightly pulled something raw in my chest. You keep your own account, I asked, trying to sound casual. Of course, she answered, glancing at me like that was obvious. What if he wanted everything in his name, slipped out before I could stop it. Her smile faltered for a second as she studied my face. That would be a red flag for me, she replied slowly. Maybe fine during a crisis, but not as a permanent setup. She reached into her bag and pulled out a crumpled flyer. Local center does workshops and free consultations if you ever need that. I slid the paper into the diaper bag next to the bank pamphlet. My hands were starting to recognize the feeling of collecting exits. On the walk home, our son chattered nonsense, oblivious to my spinning thought. Nez? I remember thinking that he deserved a mother who did more than survive. That night I waited until my husband's breathing grew deep and even. I lay beside him with my phone inches from my face. I pulled up a job site I had bookmarked on the library computer earlier. The glow on the screen lit my decision more clearly than any argument ever had. I filtered listings by remote work and part-time schedules. Most options felt out of reach after so long away. Then I found one posting that matched what I used to do before all this. My thumb hovered over the apply button while my heart pounded against the mattress. I filled out the form with one hand using the secret email. Every line I typed felt like reclaiming a piece he thought was gone. When I attached a dusty resume from an old cloud folder, I almost laughed. He had no idea that the woman lying next to him was quietly rewriting the plan. I hit submit and locked the screen, the click loud in my own ears. Beside me, he shifted once, then settled again, unaware. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling and replayed the day at the bank. That was the moment I stopped believing his version of reality and started building my own. The envelope bounced off my plate and slid into my lap. Past due, he tapped the red stamp with one finger, eyes narrow. You were home when this arrived, yet somehow it sat there. Our kid watched from his booster, spoon hovering like he felt the blame. I never saw that notice, my voice came out steady, not soft. He flicked another envelope toward me, this one already opened. Because I handle the important stuff before it hits your radar. He tilted his head, waiting for me to admit I was lucky. Why is everything under your name only? I asked, thumb on the stamp. Utilities, mortgage, every bill that matters, all of it. He smirked like I had complimented his organization instead of questioned it. Makes things simple when one adult runs the show around here. That means if something happens, I have nothing, I pushed. You have a roof and food and my income, that is something. He gathered the envelopes into a neat stack and stood. Relax, I own the risk so you don't have to think. After he left for work, I stared at the empty spot he'd occupied. The phrase one adult replayed like background noise I could not mute. I wiped our kid's hands, buckled him into the playpen and listened. Shower off, front door closed, car pulling away, finally just us. My heart thumped hard as I walked into his office. That room was usually off limits unless he called me in. I opened the lowest drawer first, the one he never used. Folders leaned against each other with his name on every tab. I grabbed the bundle marked closing and flipped through the pages. There was the purchase contract, the loan, the insurance paperwork. His signature filled every line where mine should have appeared beside it. A stray sticky note held the words refinance later in his handwriting. Beneath that stack, I found statements from my old retirement account. The first page showed a decent balance I remembered building slowly. The next page showed a transfer out to an unfamiliar number. The final page showed a total that might as well have been zero. My stomach lurched and my fingers tightened on the thin paper. I had never authorized that movement, not once, not even discussed it. He had signed something somewhere and treated my future as backup cash. I understood then why he sounded so relaxed during every money talk. I pulled my phone out with hands that would not stop trembling. One by one, I snapped quick photos of the deed and statements. Each image went straight to the hidden address I used at night. In the subject line, I typed 2 words that felt like armor. As I hit send, I heard tires in the driveway much sooner than expected. My whole body jerked like I had been caught stealing from myself. I shoved the folders back, not perfect but close enough. By the time the front door opened, I was in the hallway. You're back early, I shifted our son onto my hip like that was why. He dropped his keys in the bowl and scanned my face. Meeting got canceled, his shoulders looser than usual for daylight. What did you do today? He asked, tone light but eyes sharp. Cleaned, played, same routine as always. I bumped our kid's cheek. I felt sweat gather between my shoulder blades despite the cool room. He glanced toward the office, then back at me, then at our son. Good, at least someone around here uses their time productively. That evening I opened the secret inbox after he fell asleep. The photos from his drawer sat there like tiny landmines. I created a new folder and labeled it with one short word. Exit. A few days later, an email popped up from the job listing I had chased. The subject line included the phrase interview availability with my old field attached. For a second I thought it was spam and almost deleted it. Then my eyes caught my own resume staring back from the thread. My pulse jumped as I read their message 3 different times. They wanted a video meeting, short and preliminary, nothing guaranteed. I checked the suggested times against his usual schedule automatically. There was one window where he was always at the office. I wrote back before fear could talk me out of it. I chose the earliest slot offered, then deleted the notification on my phone. After that, I texted the neighbor who often waved from her porch. "Can you watch him for an hour next week? Quick appointment." "Of course, just knock," she replied with a smiley I could almost hear. I deleted that thread too, not because she was a risk. He had started asking who I talked to during the day. My world was becoming a place where even friendly texts felt dangerous. The night before the interview, he eyed my planner near the sink. "What's on the schedule tomorrow?" he asked, voice casual but probing. "Check up for the baby," I answered, drying my hands on a towel. He frowned, trying to recall any appointment he had agreed to. "You didn't mention that one." His gaze stayed on my face now. "It opened up last minute. They had a cancellation," I lied smoothly. He grunted something about doctors overbilling families and went back to his show. I exhaled slowly and realized I had crossed another line inside myself. When the day arrived, I dressed in clothes that no longer felt familiar. My reflection looked like a version of me I had almost forgotten. I packed snacks for our son, kissed his hair, and walked next door. The neighbor scooped him up with a warm laugh and a wink toward me. "You look ready to conquer something," she joked, bouncing him once. "I just need to get through 1 hour without a meltdown," I answered. She did not know I meant my own meltdown, not my child's. I thanked her twice, like gratitude could cover the lie I'd built. In the car, I opened my laptop and clicked the meeting link. My hands hovered above the keys until the waiting room screen appeared. When the recruiter's face came up, I straightened without thinking. It felt like stepping into air after standing at the edge forever. We talked through my past experience and long gap in employment. "I stepped away to care for my child," I explained, shoulders squared. "I'm ready to work again. I have support lined up." That last part was aspirational, but I needed her to hear certainty. Her questions hit different parts of my brain that had been dusty. By the third answer, I found a rhythm I thought I had lost. She nodded more than once and typed notes while I spoke. When she smiled near the end, my throat tightened for an entirely new reason. "Next round is with the team lead," she said, checking something off-screen. "You'll hear from us in a few days. Your background fits well." The call ended and I stared at my dim screen, stunned. I had just spoken for 30 minutes without asking anyone for permission. On the drive back, I watched my messages light up at a red light. One from him, short and clipped, asking where I moved the insurance bill. Another from the neighbor, saying our son had fallen asleep after playing hard. I chose to answer hers first and felt a quiet rebellion in that order. When I walked in to pick him up, she studied my face. "You look different in a good way," she observed, handing him over. "Just tired," I shrugged, though my chest buzzed with something else. The feeling of maybe had started to outweigh the feeling of stuck. At home, he stood by the counter with a ledger open. "Did you authorize a charge on your old account?" he asked. "Something hit there last month. Bank flagged it as unusual." His jaw flexed as he waited for my confession like a principal. "I haven't touched that account in ages," I answered, which was technically honest. He stared for a few long beats before snapping the ledger shut. "Good, because everything tied to this house runs through me now." He brushed past me, leaving the faint smell of cologne and resentment. While our son stacked blocks on the floor, I opened my notebook. I added today's date, the fake doctor visit, the interview, his question. The page looked like a puzzle starting to show a clear outline. For the first time, I believed I might actually finish it. I ended the night by forwarding the job email chain to my secret account. Then I attached the photos of the deed and drained retirement. Seeing them in one long thread made my skin prickle. He thought he owned every piece of this life, but my record of it was mine. The video call timer hit 18 minutes when his car pulled in. Tires crunched in the driveway, louder than the manager's next question. My throat tightened, but I kept smiling at the little camera dot. "Anything else you need from me today?" I asked, praying for a quick wrap. "We're close to a decision," the manager replied, glancing off-screen. "You're a strong candidate. We just have to confirm headcount." Our toddler banged a toy against the playpen, the sound sharp. Front door opened as I murmured thanks and stabbed the leave button. He walked in, dropped his keys, and froze at the sight of my open laptop. "You hosting a little online party with my internet?" he asked. I snapped the lid down and forced my shoulders to relax. Just checking some things while he played, I answered, reaching for our kid. Checking what? He leaned on the counter, watching my face, not our son. Groceries, appointments, nothing dramatic, I said, which wasn't entirely false. He pushed off the counter and wandered closer to the playpen. You remember we're a one-income household, right? No space for surprises. That phrase, one-income household, felt different now that I had a maybe. I remember who gets a paycheck, I replied, lifting our boy. But this family is not your personal project. He laughed once short, like I had tried a stand-up routine. I pay for this roof, this kid's food, every bill. He jabbed a finger toward the ceiling, then the floor, then me. You run errands inside the space that my work provides. His mouth curled slightly, like he enjoyed hearing it out loud. I could have swallowed it again and kept the peace. Instead, I sat our son in his chair and faced him fully. You're talking like we're your staff, not your family, I said. He stepped closer until the counter dug into my back like a warning. If you walked out today, what would you live on? He asked. His voice stayed quiet, which somehow landed harder than shouting. That question sat between us heavy because we both knew the answer. He turned away first, satisfied, confident that reality still belonged to him. 2 hours later, my email pinged with a new message. Subject line: offer and next steps, company name right beside it. My lungs forgot how to work for a second as I opened it. Salary, start date, training schedule, all of it spelled one thing: exit. I read it twice, then looked at our kid stacking blocks. He screeched happily when the tower fell, oblivious to my shaking hands. I typed yes before fear caught up and hit send with my thumb. Somewhere deep in my chest, something unclenched and something else braced. The next morning, I strapped our son into his seat and grabbed the pamphlet. Running to the store, I called out, already halfway to the door. Stick to the list, he answered, eyes glued to his screen. He never noticed the folded paper tucked under my phone. I parked behind the shopping center and dialed the number printed on it. A woman answered on the third ring, voice calm and direct. I think my husband has everything in his name, I blurted. And he keeps reminding me he owns what I gave up. She asked short questions, not gentle, not cruel, just precise. Is there violence? Are there joint debts? Any physical risk right now? Then she moved on to the part that made my head spin. Marriage creates shared interests, even if only one name shows. You're telling me I'm not completely exposed? I asked, gripping the wheel. You have more rights than he is describing, she answered. Document what you can, do not announce any plans, stay practical. Her tone held no drama, which somehow made the words land deeper. We set a phone consult for later that week. She gave me a list of items to gather before then. Identification, tax records, statements, any proof of his favorite lines. I wrote everything on the back of an old receipt until the ink skipped. On the way inside, I actually bought groceries so my story stayed solid. He met me at the door, arms crossed, eyes flicking to the bags. You went over the cash this week, didn't you? He asked. I handed him the change and the printed total before he could accuse. You're the one who raised prices, not me, I answered. He counted the bills, jaw tight, then shoved them into his pocket. This is why I keep the accounts under control, he muttered. If I gave you open access, we'd be underwater in a month. That line used to cut, now it mostly confirmed what the lawyer said. You really think I'm that reckless? I asked, lifting our son from his seat. I think I'm the responsible one, he replied, pointing toward his chest. And responsible people manage assets, they don't share control for fun. Well said. He glanced deliberately at me when he used that word. I felt my cheeks heat, not from shame anymore, from clarity. If he grouped me with the furniture in his mind, I needed out. That evening I waited until he showered before moving. I went back into his office with my notebook open in my hand. I snapped clearer photos this time, making sure dates were visible. Mortgage pages, retirement transfers, life insurance beneficiaries, everything that proved his story wrong. Our son babbled in the hallway, little voice echoing down the corridor. I whispered a song under my breath so he would follow the so. Lund. He toddled toward me, clutching a toy, unaware of my racing pulse. By the time the water stopped, the drawers were shut and my phone tucked away. He came out in a towel, surprised to see me near his desk. Looking for something, his tone casual, eyes not. Just grabbing the old charger, I replied, holding up a random cord. He watched me leave like he could sense a shift he could not name yet. The call with the lawyer came 2 days later during nap time. I locked the bedroom door and perched on the edge of the bed. She walked me through words I had never let myself consider before. Equity, support, parenting time, things that did not match his speeches. He keeps saying I'd have nothing without him, I confessed. That narrative serves him, not the law, she answered simply. You might not get half of everything, but you are not disposable. She wanted me to hear that last part twice, I could tell. We talked through practical steps instead of big emotional decisions. Open your own account, redirect any future income, secure documents offsite. She stressed one point more than anything else as we wrapped. Do not confront him yet, plan your exit before you challenge control. I hung up and stared at the locked door for a long moment. Our son snored softly on the monitor, small hand over his face. I realized I was the only buffer between that child and this power game. Fear did not vanish, but it started sharing space with something steadier. That night he came home with a smug little grin. Got a bonus, he announced, tossing his jacket toward the chair. Thought about taking us out, but daycare isn't exactly cheap. He watched me carefully while pretending to review a slip of paper. Daycare, I repeated, pulse spiking. You told me staying home was the only responsible choice. His smile widened like he had been waiting for this opening. Boss mentioned a promotion if I'm more available, so maybe we outsource you. Outsource you? The phrase hit me so hard I had to lean on the counter. Interesting, I managed, fighting the urge to shout. So you want a stranger doing what you call nothing all day? He chuckled and shook his head like I was being dramatic again. Relax, I'm not dropping him off tomorrow, he said. But if you ever try to walk, remember I can afford help. His eyes hardened on that last sentence, daring me to test it. He thought the threat of replacement would lock me in even tighter. Instead, it clarified what I needed from the job and the lawyer. Not just a door out, but a way to stand on my own 2 feet. He had finally drawn the line I refused to stay behind. After he went to bed, I opened an online application for a separate account. I entered the new employer information into the direct deposit section. In 2 weeks, my first paycheck would land somewhere he could not reach. I stared at the confirmation screen until the fear turned into a sharp focus. Then I texted the neighbor again with a different kind of request. Could you keep a spare copy of some paperwork for me, I wrote. Just in case I misplace things here, long story. There was a pause, then her response popped up fast. Of course, drop it any time, no questions unless you want them. I swallowed hard and typed back a simple thank you. I gathered the photocopies I had made at the library into a plain folder. Handing it over the next day felt like passing a relay baton. Back home, I watched our son drive a toy truck across the floor. He looked up every few seconds to make sure I was still there. I wondered what he would remember about this time when he grew. I promised myself he would recall a mother who finally chose both of us over fear. My phone vibrated on the counter while he stood beside me. Bank alert, deposit received. The preview flashed long enough for both of us to see. I flipped it face down so fast our son dropped his spoon. That another subscription you forgot to cancel, his gaze pinned the phone like it might confess. It's spam, I shrugged, wiping applesauce from our kid's arm. He watched me a second too long, then reached for his coffee instead. Screens off during family time, he added like some corporate memo. I smiled at our boy and counted the seconds until the bathroom was free. When the door finally closed behind me, I locked it and exhaled. I opened the banking app for my new account with my thumb shaking. The number staring back was not huge, but it was mine untouched. Rent for a modest place, deposit, food for a month if I stretched. I slid down onto the edge of the tub and let my head drop. This was not fantasy money or a gift he could yank away. It was payment for hours no one could belittle with a joke. Behind the door, I heard him humming to our son like nothing had shifted. A memory of the lawyer's voice cut through the noise in my head. When income starts landing in your own account, options multiply fast. I scrolled to the tax she had sent for low-cost rentals nearby. My finger hovered for a beat, then I hit call before courage faded. A tired receptionist answered and rattled off what was available this month. Studio 2 cramped with a toddler, 2-bedroom in a rough complex, risky. Small 1-bedroom above a storefront, older but maintained and inside my range. Can you view it this week? She asked, tapping keys I could hear. Yes, tomorrow, I replied, staring at the bathroom tiles like they might argue. It has to be late morning, I added, mind already rearranging lies. We chose a time, she gave me the address, and I memorized it. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger planning a heist. When I stepped back into the kitchen, he was scrolling through his emails. You good in there? He asked without looking up. Headache, I answered, pulling our son into my arms as an anchor. You know stress would drop if you trusted me with decisions, he added, almost gentle. Trust, that word coming from him almost made me laugh. Instead, I kissed our boy's hair and pretended to read a recipe. Every cell in my body was buzzing with the appointment I had just made. He reached for the salt and brushed my hip like he still owned it. That night, after our kid finally passed out, I started packing tiny. Extra pajamas, a few outfits, favorite stuffed animal tucked deep in the diaper bag. If he noticed the bag looked fuller, he did not say anything. I moved like someone rehearsing for a fire drill no one else believed in. In bed, he scrolled through real estate listings on his phone. Market's wild right now, he said almost to himself. Good thing I locked this place in when I did. He glanced at me. You really don't understand how many people would kill for what you've got. What I've got, I repeated, fingers tightening around the blanket. A secure home, bills covered, you free from the grind out there. He gestured around the room like a landlord inspecting property. There's a reason my name S on the paperwork, I took all the weight. He thought that speech still worked on me. I turned toward him and studied his face, the easy certainty there. If you lost your job tomorrow, where would we stand? I asked quietly. He snorted, rolling onto his back like I had told a joke again. I'm not losing it, he answered, voice full of cocky assurance. My company needs me more than you realize. I'm valuable. He stretched, relaxed, fully convinced of his own invincibility. In that moment, I knew he would never voluntarily let go of this setup. The next morning, I told him the neighbor had asked for a favor. She needs help watching her niece while she runs errands, I said. You're just the community babysitter now, he teased, tossing his keys in his hand. At least someone appreciates you staying home. He left whistling, satisfied with his line. I waited until his car faded from view before moving. Our son went into the stroller with snacks in his battered truck. Adventure today, I whispered to him, more for myself than for him. At the neighbor's door, she stepped aside without questions. Her eyes flicked to my overstuffed bag and then to my face. You can use my address if you ever need to, she murmured. I nodded once, choking on gratitude I did not have time to unpack. I'll be back in an hour or two, I told her, kissing my kid. He reached out for me, lower lip wobbling just a little. I'm coming back, I promised, eyes burning for reasons beyond separation anxiety. As I turned to go, she squeezed my arm like a silent blessing. The rental building sat above a hardware shop that smelled like dust and metal. The property manager met me on the stairs, clipboard tucked under her arm. Place is old but solid, she said, unlocking the door with a practiced twist. You said you needed something fast and flexible, this is that. Inside was bare yet oddly full of possibilities. Sink, stove, a small closet, nothing fancy, nothing fragile. I walked it twice with her describing lease terms in short bursts. My mind kept flicking between monthly payment and his smug face at home. I can hold it for a few days, she offered, watching my hesitation. But I'll need a deposit and first month's rent to take it off the list. I opened my banking app again, thumb hovering over the number. The choice was brutal and simple at the same time, him or this. I can pay now, I said, feeling my voice steady itself. I filled out the forms with the practiced speed of someone who used to do this. Place of employment, income, emergency contact, all things I had once surrendered. When she handed me the keys, they felt heavier than any ring he'd ever given me. On the walk back, my legs trembled, but I kept moving. I had an address now, not just a fantasy of leaving. If everything blew up tonight, there was a door that would open for me. I repeated the apartment number under my breath until it became a rhythm. The lawyer called later that afternoon while our son napped. I have a lease, I blurted before she could say hello. Her pause lasted just long enough to mean something. Then we moved to phase 2, she replied, tone turning brisk. Phase 2 meant paperwork I had never imagined filling out. Petitions, financial disclosures, requests for temporary arrangements regarding our child. She walked me through which boxes to check and which words to avoid. Do not warn him, she reminded me. Surprise limits retaliation. Won't he see the money missing? I asked, glancing toward the living room. He already thinks you're careless, remember, she answered. Let that work for you, he'll assume it's groceries until it's too late. That truth tasted bitter and useful at the same time. We set a date to file 3 days out. Use the time to move essentials quietly, she advised. Kids adapt better when they sense their caregiver is sure. I hung up and stared at my shaking hands because sure was not how I felt. That evening he walked in carrying takeout, looking pleased with himself. Bonus came through bigger than expected, he announced. Thought I'd treat my little household. He placed the bags on the counter like offering sacrifices to his own ego. Our kids squealed at the smell and tried to climb out of the chair. I unpacked containers while he launched into another monologue about merit raises. See, hard work pays off when you're not busy with kid stuff, he said. Not everyone gets to be king of their castle. Interesting word, I answered, arranging plates with careful precision. King implies the rest of us are just subjects. He grinned, obviously liking that image. Hey, every kingdom needs order, without it you get chaos. I looked at our son smearing sauce on his shirt, blissfully ignorant. You ever think about what happens if your subjects stop bowing? I asked. He laughed, shaking his head like I was being cute. Not worried, you're not going anywhere, where would you even go? That question almost made me say the address out loud. Instead, I wiped sauce from our kids' shoes and kept my mouth shut. I'm not as trapped as you think, I replied under my breath. He didn't catch it over the clatter of plastic forks and his own voice. The next day I started staging our exit one small piece at a time. A few outfits disappeared into the diaper bag every morning. Old photos on a thumb drive slipped into my sock drawer. Spare toothbrush, medications, birth certificates, all moved into a folder at the neighbor's. My son noticed the changes more than my husband did. He clung to his favorite blanket whenever I carried the bag toward the door. Kids sense storms before grown-ups admit the sky has shifted. I held him longer at bedtime, whispering stories about adventures instead of walls. On the third night, his temper finally hit a new edge. He stood over the table with an unpaid utility notice in his hand. Care to explain why this almost got cut off, his voice low and tight. You sort the Daily Mail, remember, that's your department. I did, and that one never showed up, I answered, keeping my gaze level. You're slipping, he snapped, throwing the paper down hard. This is why I keep the account locked. One of us has to stay competent. Our son flinched at the sound, eyes jumping between us. I stepped between them before his anger had somewhere worse to land. You want me completely dependent but also flawless at everything, I said. You cannot have it both ways forever. He folded his arms, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I have paid for every inch of this life, he growled. I sacrifice, I grind, I carry all the pressure. He pointed at our son, you get the fun parts and then complain. Veins in his neck stood out as his voice climbed. My own fear flickered, then something colder took its place. You enjoy reminding me, I replied, steady now. Every argument turns into a speech about what you own. He opened his mouth to deny it right on cue. I do own this, he insisted, sweeping his arm around the room. Mortgages, insurance, future savings, you walked away from earning power. He jabbed a finger toward the floor. Without me you have 4 walls and no way to keep them. He believed every word, that was the worst part. I felt my hands slide into my pocket where the new keys rested. Cold metal against my palm grounded me in a way his threats never could. Are you sure that's still true? I asked quietly. He frowned, thrown off by the calm instead of tears. What's that supposed to mean? He demanded, voice losing its smoothness. It means I'm not discussing this until a third party is present, I answered. A judge maybe, or a mediator, someone who doesn't benefit from keeping me small. His face went slack, then twisted as the implication landed. You talked to a lawyer, he spat the word like it was filth. Behind my back. CK, while I'm paying for everything you touch. He stepped forward, but I didn't move this time. Our son started whimpering, hands over his ears like he'd done this before. Stop, I said, lifting our boy into my arms. You're scaring him, and I'm done letting that be normal. He froze at the sight of our son's trembling chin. That gave me just enough space to keep going. I have a job now, I continued, voice clear. Money that never passed through your hands or your approval. I redirected income weeks ago and I signed a lease. I watched his world tilt in real time as each sentence landed. You what? He whispered, color draining from his face. You think some entry-level check makes you independent. He barked out a humorless laugh that died halfway. You're not leaving with my kid, that's not happening. He is not a trophy you get for winning power games, I replied. He is a person and a court will see who actually cares for him. I adjusted our son on my hip, feeling his heartbeat hammer against mine. In the meantime, we're staying somewhere you don't control. He paced the length of the room twice, breathing hard. You're overreacting to a few comments, he insisted. People say stupid things in marriages all the time. Throwing your whole life away because you're emotional is insane. I studied him like I was seeing a stranger. You drained my retirement account without asking, I reminded him. You locked me out of our finances and called it responsibility. That's not a few comments, that's a pattern and I'm done living inside it. He stopped pacing and stared, almost pleading now. You can't manage this on your own, he said, voice dropping. You're good with our son, but money, deals, long-term planning, that's me. Underneath the arrogance, I finally heard it, fear. Watch me, I answered, not out of bravado, but because I had to. My knees still felt weak, my chest still tight, yet the words came easy. I grabbed the diaper bag with one free hand, the strap already adjusted. Every hidden item inside suddenly felt justified. Where are you going? His voice cut through the air like a snapped wire. For now, to a safe place where you can't shut off anything, I said. I'll give you the address through my attorney, not directly. He lunged toward the door as if he could physically block the future. I shifted our son to my other hip and met his eyes. You touch me or try to rip him from my arms, I call the police, I warned. You know I've been documenting everything, I'm not bluffing. His hand fell away from the knob like it burned. He swallowed, eyes flickering from my face to our child and back. You're really walking out, he murmured, almost dazed. After everything I've provided, you're throwing it back. The self-pity in his tone made something in me finally snap clean. I'm walking towards something, I corrected him. A life where love isn't tied to control or bank logins. You can keep the house if it means that much, I'll fight for stability for him. I nodded toward our son, whose small fingers were curled in my shirt. Then I opened the door. The hallway felt longer than it ever had, every step waited. Behind us he called my name, promising therapy, changes, anything I wanted. I did not pause because I knew those promises were currency he only spent under threat. The neighbor opened her door before I even knocked. One look at our faces and she stepped aside without small talk. You ready? She asked softly, eyes flicking toward the street where my car waited. I nodded because if I tried to speak, I might crumble. Buckling my son into his seat, I felt his hand pat my wrist. He watched my face the whole time, searching for cues. It's okay, I whispered, fastening the last strap. We're going somewhere that belongs to us in a way a deed never could. As I pulled away from the curb, I checked the mirror once. He stood in the doorway of the house he kept calling his. No keys in my hand for that place anymore, no power left over me. The only keys that mattered now were the ones digging into my palm, leading us forward.